I'm now off mute. I'm the program coordinator here at I2N Hub Hunter Street, and I'd like to welcome you all to Startup Stories. Before we jump into our event, I'd like to acknowledge that I am hosting this in-person and virtual event. There are people joining us from far and wide online. From the lands of the Awabakal and Warramai people, I acknowledge the traditional custodians of the various lands on which you're all joining us from today, and pay my respects to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, past, present, and emerging. Sorry, I pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging, and celebrate the diversity of Aboriginal peoples and their ongoing cultures and connections to the lands and waters of Australia. You can show your respect and awareness of country you are joining us by letting us know in the chat, if you're online, where it is that you're joining us from. So for those of you who are new to the I2N, we're an initiative of the University of Newcastle with a central aim of being a catalyst for regional transformation through enterprise skill development, new venture creation, and entrepreneurship. At the heart of the I2N is a strategically positioned entrepreneurship centre in Newcastle CBD here, offering incubation facilities and complemented by a series of connection events and cohort-based programs covering individual enterprise skill development and pre-startup creation, new venture creation, acceleration, innovation, and innovation development for existing SMEs. All industry sectors are supported, extended beyond the traditional tech-based startups to include social innovation and creative industries. And if you don't know, we're actually moving from the space that you're in this morning to a new building in Honeysuckle in 2 weeks. And at the end of the month, in early July, we'll welcome you all to our first event with a speaker and many tours of the building. So please stay tuned for that. So in just under 4 years of operation and with the support of the New South Wales government's Boosting Business Innovation program, the I2N has welcomed well over 4,000 innovators and entrepreneurs from a range of industries and sectors and at many stages of their innovation journey. We have helped fuel, grow and graduate more than 70 businesses, of which have raised over $6 million in funding and have fostered the creation of dozens of jobs, work integrated learning students, and they've acquired customers, won awards, grown their teams and developed products and solutions that are driving real world impact. We're recognized as having a leading and unique capacity to act as a connector and enabler of entrepreneurship and innovation within the Hunter, utilizing skills of experienced and skilled program developers, facilitators, mentors, and coaches. If you'd like to know more, please visit our website at newcastle.edu.au/I2N. So a little outline for this morning's event. We've taken a number of questions from you all. Thank you so much for submitting them. There were some great questions in there, and we'll work our way through them this morning with David, our speaker. And we'll open up at the end for anyone on Zoom or in person who has a question, something on the top of mind you'd really like answered. You'll have an opportunity at the very end to ask David that. For those joining us in person, if you need to use the bathroom, please just go down to the end of the building. There's a white wall and the toilets to the rear. And if for any reason there's an emergency, please calmly leave through the front doors and we'll muster at the corner of Derby and Hunter Street. So our guest this morning, as I'm sure you all know, is David Sivyer. He's the founder of Feedback Organic, a local circular economy venture, and the creator of the 1 Hour Farmer, which is a fantastic initiative and very fun if you should all take part. David's innovation journey started when he noticed the large amount of food waste created in Australia, and he set out to solve it. Feedback Organic's model is simple but super effective. The team collects food waste from local cafes, restaurants, and private homes in the community and convert it to rich compost. David has grown the Feedback Organic team to 8 employees whose skills range from permaculture to project management, and together they have diverted over 1 million litres of food waste. Feedback Organic were participants in the inaugural I2N Validator program, where they gained new insights into their business model, tapped into new networks, and brought structure and stability to the way their business operates. David was awarded the University of Newcastle's Student Entrepreneur of the Year in 2020, and won grants and support from the New South Wales Government's Environmental Protection Agency, the Mosman City and the Mosman City Council. Welcome, David, and thank you for taking the time to join us at Startup Stories.
No worries, Rich. Thank you kindly as well. Hello, everyone. Thanks for making it here as well. Yeah, I can start if you'd like. Yeah, thanks everyone for coming. Rich, can I just borrow the clicker? That's all right. That's the clicker. Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, so you'll find probably a few different puns around everything to do with farming and food waste and community and all sorts of different things. But yeah, we kind of started about probably 2013 is when it all kicked off. And that was a unique tale in itself. I had an incredibly different background to where I am right now. And that was in corporate kind of life, I guess. And even producing electronic music, all sorts of different things to, where we were all trying to search a passion for our own individual interests. And I turned 30 and ended up heading back to the family farm to run that. And just discovered that from the kind of the background that I had in hospitality and business, I was kind of thinking about how can we do something different up at the farm, I guess, and maybe thought about using the background of seeing so much food waste within commercial outlets and homes and everything itself. Or just even personally, you'll probably experience it yourself. What do you do with your own food waste at home? And so I moved back to the farm, had this kind of dilemma of like, what do we do with this current scenario? And so at the time, I'm pretty sure I moved back to the farm and then just decided to get a dog. And that was, this is the best way forward, I felt. This is Bennett, but this is the family farm. And this is a juicy amount of compost that we've got here. So what that looked like for kind of the ideas of just basically like, I was a little bit isolated up the farm. I thought, why not actually head back into kind of the businesses we work with, or I have now thoroughly worked with. I had the relationship with some cafes and thought I might actually just go and grab a coffee with them, get back into town instead of being up at the farm all the time. And that was the catalyst for this now really interesting venture, which is kind of where I'm heading now. So the idea was we actually composted collection, or at least collected food waste from restaurants, cafes, from anything that produced food waste twice a week, and then brought it back up to the farm and started to compost. After that, the idea was to think, okay, like how do we actually utilize all of this incredible amount of compost that we've got, this beautiful stuff, and thinking like, okay, the idea was to actually see if we can actually apply it to the farm. But in the end, it was so insignificant compared to the farm. Thought about why not kind of experiment or stick with sustainable options. So what you've got here in front of you here is quite an array of products out of that are, I guess, sustainably packaged to a degree. So I went to where Gloria Jeans roast their coffee beans, and I didn't put an image of this in, but there was my ute was completely full, like illegally, with the amount of Hessian bags on the back. So driving on the freeway like that was not the best thing to do. But I bought an industrial sewing machine and just started to create different things of where people could grow in small places and in apartments as well, and trying to do something different. So from that, you can see some experimentation, and I feel like anyone who wants to try and do something different, I feel like it's a huge element of just experimenting and seeing what works and what doesn't. From that, this is going through the story of the progression of how we've got to here. Sticking with sustainable as well, these are all basically just creations I've made, I've made from just pallets. And like all the products here are basically from completely repurposed pallets, and the smaller or these types of self-watering planter boxes here, and one more over here. These are all 100% waste. Like the internal lining, the Hessian on the handles are all kind of the seams of the coffee bean bags and things like that. So this is just for people to be able to grow in small apartments and so on. But a big part of it was actually trying to get other people involved in it. And it's an exciting element of trying to work with other people and passing on actual kind of the learnings to yourself and so how you can engage. But me personally, I really enjoy just hanging around other people. So this is secretly, it was just to do workshops so we could all hang out. And this was all throughout Newcastle and Sydney, but this was just different ideas to do many different workshops. So this basically led, to the next step of how can we do, like I basically moved to Newcastle eventually from kind of spending too much time up at the farm, and thought about how do we actually, utilize, maybe we could actually process the compost within an urban environment and actually grow it, just have the cycle happening on site instead of taking it up to our family farm. And the first site and how it all started was not far away from here. It was at Maryville as a part of the Hunter Research Foundation, which is, I second anyone just to do this and just be courageous and ask things. This all started by just me going in there and just saying, hey, like, do you mind if I start a farm? And that was it. And the whole idea behind that is just like they had this vacant area up the top here in the center. And just, over the course of a couple of weeks, I turned it into the small little farm on this side. While this was happening as well, I started another farm in Wallsend, which is just another, I think it was Shirley's backyard. She was a 90-year-old. She was fantastic. and just to be able to have those conversations and say, hey, here's, you know, a small proof of concept here, what we can do. And now what we do, this is actually in Cardiff Heights, which is where we have our full operation. And that's where we do, well, up until very recently, we've been doing about 4 tons of food waste just on this small little section behind the greenhouse here. And then we process it there and basically grow a couple of 100 kilos of food each week, and then provide that to, around 40 to 50 families each week. And there's some cool little stats there that the fact, we've on an acre, we've had schools, so many volunteers, 1,000 volunteers. We supply food to 45 to 50 families each week. We've done 18 tons of food since we've started. And that amount of food waste is pretty crazy. And it just shows you, like, if you have a tiny little space like that, it's what you can actually apply yourself to do, to practically make some change for, the future, I guess. So from this, and like trying to think about where would we go now, in a second, if this will turn over. In the meantime, awesome. So now the whole idea was to kind of go think, okay, how can we get more people involved with what we're doing here now, and even maybe to replicate the idea? So what you might see here is just a whole array of different ideas that we've been kind of progressing. The one in the center is our newest addition to what we do, and it's called Feedback Futures. There's some pamphlets over here around it, and it's basically how to get primary and secondary students, primary secondary school students, involved in what we do, and actually give them the kind of the direction to say, hey, here's a bit of an innovative kind of approach to food waste and food production. It's incredibly accessible for you guys because it's about 5 minutes away from your school. And then you can see like how much fun it is for them as well. But the whole idea is it's around a behavior change kind of program to reconnect with people with how food is grown and how you can actually sustainably manage food waste. So it's that's the next progression of where we're heading. And awesomely, the EPA is giving us funding to do that as well. And as Richard touched on before, Mosman City Council, who strangely enough has been a connection for us because we did a speech at the Vivid Festival a couple of years ago. And that's actually where one of the next stages of what we'll be doing is starting in Sydney as well. Also open to, suggestions around here as well. So if you do want to get involved, it's pretty exciting, nice and simple, very casual, and it's just a relaxing environment. Which, basically, if you do want to become a 1 hour farmer, you come on any times during the week or the weekend by arrangement. And you can bring your friends, and the whole idea is you actually get involved. You're part of the harvest. You walk home with some produce as well, and then you just skill yourself up with how to grow at home as well. Any tips and tricks? And I feel like the biggest takeaway from all of this is, and the kind of the motivation of why I'm doing this is probably because of this, because I think it's like this is like my desktop wallpaper as well. It's like, this is like a version of Feedback Futures, but for early childhood centers. And it's like the most adorable thing. Like there's no construction, there's no constructive outline when these kids come to the farm. You're just doing whatever you can, but it's just like the best thing. And I encourage everyone to come out to the farm and just experience a few different things. It'd be interesting. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, David. That was fantastic. I'm sure that your journey, and bear with me while I reset the camera, I'm sure your journey was all sorts of loops, turns, and ups and downs, but you've made it sound, it's made a lot of sense as it's progressed in the way that you've told it then, which is great to see. It's a fantastic journey full of color and vibrancy. So thank you for that.
Yeah, you never really know where you're going to head. I think that's the experiment.
So as we mentioned before, we've collected a bunch of different questions from the audience here and the ones joining us online. And we've decided to put them into a few different themes. So we're going to start this morning with questions from emerging entrepreneurs. And we'll move through questions about technology, business, and some challenge management, which you may have had. So we'll start this morning with the first question. What surprised you most in your startup journey?
It's a really good question. I think, as I touched on before, how you just have to keep experimenting, and also having the uncertainty of not knowing where you're going, or at least it's certainly great to have a mission and align to that fantastically. But sometimes it's like you're such in a unique new field that you're trying to work out how ultimately yeah, like how, where are you going to go? So what surprised me the most is probably being ingenious, I guess, is a simple thing to try and leverage really simple solutions sometimes, not get too crazy with your thoughts, but just head towards where you're passionate about, but also make sure that you keep it simple. That's pretty true.
Keeping it simple, great. This question's from Yannick Zapf, who's an MD at YZ Consulting and also a mentor on our BMS team. He's asked, what's the minimum food waste one can sign up with?
Absolutely. So how the food cycle works is we host bins or host food cycle bins all around Newcastle and the Hunter itself. And if you are perhaps an individual or like a domestic user from your home, how that works is to make it viable for us, we need a household to host one of these bins, and then for 3 to 4 households also to join that bin as well. And that starts just to, on the smaller scale, to be $4.30 per week, just to make sure it's worthwhile for us to be able to do it. And that's it. That's how it starts. You just basically send an application through to say, hey, we're interested. We'll respond and say, yep, we just need to get three or four households to sign up, and that's it. We'll make that process pretty easy.
Do you assess that on like a geography? Say if someone's a bit too close there, maybe you should use their bin or tap into theirs.
Yeah, well, there's a whole mapping system on the website as well, which if certain solutions on the mapping site don't necessarily aid that solution for them, yeah, it's just a case-by-case basis for sure. Yeah, we'll just work it out.
Fantastic. Alex Vary, who's a local founder in Newcastle, has asked, how did you make your first step from employee to founder? You did touch on that, but were there other options that you took? Why was the founder choice the one that you decided to go with?
Yeah. This is what I mean by just like, there's so much uncertainty. I feel like it's you can have an idea of where you'd like to go and what you like, what keeps you passionate about things. But how it started was moving back to the farm and just realizing, like, I dare say it's funny, my future for the last 8 years started from me wanting to just like socialize more instead of being up at the farm. And like it's seriously because of the background in hospitality and having a corporate kind of business acumen idea about how business works to a degree. And I did study business as well, but I don't know how much that has helped. But from that itself, it's just the idea of making that choice to want to socialize more and put it towards a purpose, I guess. It's everyone's scenario is going to be so different, but as in for me, the farm, the family fund has been a massive player in decision making for myself and my sister as well. So it's interesting how we've kind of trying to adapt our future based towards that. Interesting. We've all probably got things like that in our lives we have to base decisions around. Maybe you'll do it well.
Excellent. Peter Morrissey, who's joining us in the audience this morning, he's an industry advisor at HunterNet. He's asked, how did you decide where to create your farm in the Hunter? And is it possible for Feedback Organic to create more?
G'day, Peter. Hello. Yes, and yes, we definitely can create more for sure. That's probably the next step of where we'd like to take things as well, and where we're kind of pitching to an audience to access funding towards that as well. But it started as the Hunter Research Foundation in Maryville, and it was just a tiny little footprint of about 40 meters squared. And that's where, from little things, big things grow. So that's how tiny it is. Like you can start something like that, or it actually started myself in my backyard, and then which was also a rental property, which is also you need to make sure you address these things with the landlords. But any ideas if you have that you'd like to start around that, I feel like just a small little prototype to see how it works. And that's how it kicked off. It's cool. I hope that helps.
And when you're deciding...
Yeah, sorry, Peter had a question.
Oh, sorry.
For the first one in Maryville, there was necessarily no approval for that. Wall's End was Shirley's backyard, which is fantastic. So no approval needed for that. For the larger side of things in Cardiff Heights, we have had the EPA out there and Lake Mac Council, because it actually sits within Lake Mac Shire. And they've approved everything from that, which is fantastic. Even processing food waste in that environment as well, as long as we were doing it by certain legislation which is approved by the EPA, it seemed to be okay. One of the biggest lessons possibly from all of this, and not lessons, but as in we were so aware of it from the very beginning, is to make sure that you're across all of the stakeholders that you engage with or just somehow interact with. And when I say that specifically, it's more to do with neighbours as well. And just, yeah, it's been such an ongoing challenge as well. For choosing your location is an incredibly important part, and who is all associated with that. It's been incredibly lucky to the operation we've got going on there, and just being transparent constantly with the neighbours, because it's a community-based enterprise. So you need to be aware of those things and just keep those communication channels open and give them plenty of feed boxes. That's what feed boxes are our pardon, yeah, exactly. Yeah, in what we can actually afford as well. So our feed box is our delivery of our home produce each week, and it's certainly a form of transactional currency that you can outweigh things with, and it's very helpful. Obviously, they see the end product and everyone gets on the same page.
Speaking of the way that you engage with the different products that you have, your farm is the heart and soul of your operation, and then a lot of things come out of it. The feed box is the 1 hour farmer. So when you're planning to build a new farm, when you've got your sites on a new location, what's the Goldilocks area look like? Is it really dense urban, or is it a little bit on the fringes? And how much land would you really want on your next farm?
Yeah, totally. It's been a great example of what a kind of a prototype should look like, to be honest. To be able to process that amount of food waste per week has been fantastic. So I feel, and also then grow that much produce, but then also provide access to local schools and community members as well. I think the definition is somewhat urban/peri-urban, I would say. It'd be great to be able to have a location in the city as well. But I think it depends. It depends on what model you'd like to do. If you wanted to do an urban farm across the road here somehow, and there was a footprint that was big enough, I have no doubt we could do that without a question. You could do it on a rooftop if you wanted to. There's no problems with that. I think involving the food waste may be a different scenario, and I feel like that would be perhaps more peri-urban, just to consider, people next to a corporate building, which would be an interesting conversation with, just saying maybe we're not there yet. That's all. And which, actually with processing of the food waste, I feel what a unique recent development has been as well is we've started to look into outsourcing that, so we can do urban farms anywhere now as a result of that. I'll talk more about that if you'd like at some point.
Thinking back to when you first started your journey to where you're sitting at today, how did your expectations change as you progressed through that journey? What have your perspective changed? How did you go into business, and when did you start to see changes in the way that you thought? This question's from Mia Feleni.
Fantastic. Yeah, I ponder about this now and then, about the trajectory of feedback and kind of the expectations on it as a business, and perhaps even from the expectations of the community of it as a business as well. And it's such a great example of a closed loop or a circular economy. And it touches on so many great things on environment, like community, like food production, responsible, like so many of the SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals as well. And like, I nearly feel like the expectations that are a part of it, like I'm very open to feedback, and I feel like it's nearly like, what do you think we should do next? Like kind of thing. And I feel like we all have a great gauge of what is a great choice. And so the expectations are coming nearly from other people as well. And I respect that. And maybe I'm a unique individual like that, but I have a certain, career ambition, that's fine. But also I'm so open to feedback, and just, I think it's probably intelligent to do that, to listen to people and have a certain direction. But the expectations are probably just what everyone else is expecting as well. And it's because it's like, as a community, we kind of choose where we'd like to go. And so I'm happy to think about what expectations everyone else has as well.
It's a fantastic theme or behavior trait you see in entrepreneurs, that they know where they want to go, but they're so happy to take on advice and take on, bits of data that help them get through their journey better.
So true. It's a real personal lesson as well, I think.
So moving on to the technology theme of questions, and you mentioned circular economy. People who have taken part in both in person and online in this event, they definitely are aware of the circular economy theme and how much of a role it plays in everyday business and life. So Jamie Sy, who's joining us in the audience this morning, has asked, how are you leveraging or collaborating with other solutions that are tackling food waste? And also, how are you empowering the community to take action?
Right on. Definitely 1 hour farming is the kind of empowering, is building your skill set and come out along and kind of, that's strangely enough on that topic. That is how the employees of Feedback have begun. They've come as 1 hour farmers, and that's certainly given the skills and empowered them to not only be involved, but actually begin their own business and enterprise from it, which is, I can talk about that later as well. But to engage with other people who are also doing things around food waste, that's what I just wanted to touch on before, is if we are setting up urban farms, circular economy kind of things, that the models that we're doing at the moment, I feel like the one thing that's holding that back to a degree of actually perhaps on the food waste side of things and collaborating with others is that we can only process X amount of food waste each week on these farms. So the most recent collaboration we've partnered with and just got on board, which is just opening up the possibilities, is we've started to work with the organics facility at Awaba, which is where Ramondis is actually now working for us, which is fantastic. So they're now supporting our customers that we have collected from. And the outcome of this is that it's providing our opportunity to collect from a gazillion more places, if that's the technical term. And so from that, it's collaborating with other people in the industry is we're basically standing on their shoulders and their infrastructure, and not being limited by, as I touched on before, like perhaps the stakeholders that we operate with around the farm. So this just removes that, and we can focus on the growing, focus on the community kind of accessibility, which is where the Feedback Futures program comes into it, and where I'm so keen to do, because you can get caught up in some different, different operational sides of things where perhaps you don't need to be putting too much time into those. And there's so many things about having to-do lists and then also not to-do lists. So I feel like that's one of them. So there you go.
I like it. Is your not to-do list as balanced as your to-do list?
No.
Okay.
Not yet. We're in a transitional period.
Amity Yor, who's a graduate landscape architect at Moya Landscape Architects, has asked, could you please describe your composting process and its role in the larger Feedback organic system?
Totally. Well, obviously it's changed a little bit just recently because of the outsourcing of it. But this has been an iterative process as well of just trying to work out what works best with how we collect it or how we process it, or do we have the labor to process it? And you've got to work with all of these different kind of things that you have to actually think about. So up at the farm, when we first started, it was actually myself and my dad. He converted a forage harvester, which is, I don't know, probably no one knows what that is, but it's a machine which would harvest green grass with this kind of auger and flails, and it would spit it up through this fluming, this chute, and then spit it into another vehicle to say then you could go and feed cattle with it. So you can imagine, like, how does this work? So I would come back up from the hunter to the farm as we started off with this little tiny 20-litre buckets and 60 of those, and then lining them up in a long windrow and actually just kind of building up layers of wood chip and hay and basically the appropriate organic material that you need for composting, which is 25 parts carbon to 1 part nitrogen, other way around, 25 parts nitrogen to 1 part carbon, sorry. And so we'd have this huge long windrow, and this machine would just run over it and just be the god of composting processing. It was so impressive. But then like you switch to now doing this in the city, and you're like, okay, what do you do? So there's, just to get quickly to an answer for you, we've moved through about 8 different steps to now have these 2 meter by maybe 1.5 meter rectangular bays, which are completely enclosed with a cover on them as well. And how that works is they've got holes drilled in the side of them. This is I'm talking about simplicity. And we plop all the delightful food waste in there, not really mixing it up at all, but how it is passively aerated as you're trying to create aerobic decomposition instead of anaerobic. The difference is it creates methane or not. And if you can capture the methane with anaerobic, that's a good thing, but we couldn't. So we're sticking to passive aeration. And so you can picture this big wooden cube, which has holes drilled in the side of it. And then within those holes, we've also used another waste product, which is a electrical contractor's waste, which is these small little plastic conduits, which are about 1.5 meters long, hollow. We've also drilled 40 million holes through each of these as well. and then you pop them all through the compost bay itself. So it's drawing the air in and passively aerating it. So I don't know whether you can actually visualize what I was just talking about, but that's how we've got to the most recent version before we started to outsource it, because it was just getting to such a volume. We're doing 4 tons a week, and on a small little farm, there's only so much capacity to do that. So yeah, hopefully that answers that. But that was how the ins and outs of composting works for us.
You really had me at the circular economy when you said you were drilling holes into the box and to have the process not use methane, but you took it up a notch when you mentioned you're taking also electrical contractors' waste and also adding it into the circular economy mix.
It's so true.
It's so impressive.
Oh, it's so funny. Like if you try and run a farm on, trying to just budget anything, you're trying to repurpose anything, I'm sure. So yeah, that's works well with the community helping you out. Yeah, that's good.
So let's move on to some business themed questions. And we've had a question from Alex Blow, who's the manager at the Central Coast Food Alliance. And they've asked, do you have any ambition to scale beyond Newcastle? And if so, what sort of support have you had or do you need?
Yeah, totally. Thank you for that question as well. Was it Alex? Alex, thank you, Alex. It's a great question. Absolutely. I think there's only benefit for this being scaled, and not necessarily by feedback. Of course, we'd love to drive that, but I feel like the biggest outcome of this is educating and skilling people up to be able to, for other people to do this themselves. And I feel like you should come as a 1 hour farmer. I keep saying that, but you'll get the idea from that. So to answer that question, yeah, we can absolutely take it elsewhere, and it is being taken elsewhere, specifically at the moment to Mossman, and that's because there has been funding through the EPA for that, but also an opportunity has come out of that, which is separate from Mossman Council that we were working with. So without a question, there's time, and to make that happen, I feel this is one of the next steps of feedback is whether we continue as a social enterprise or move into a not-for-profit status to access either just more funding or different avenues of funding. It just depends on our future. And I say that because that funding will obviously provide such great opportunities for other communities. I'm keen to chat to anyone about that, if anyone's watching.
Carol Garnett, who's the founder at CL Garnett, has asked, how many outlets currently participate in all of your programs?
Restaurants wise, around the Hunter here, around the Newcastle and Hunter, there's about 40 restaurants who are a part of it. Schools at the moment, we've had about 5 different schools come out pretty regularly. But I think the early childhood centres as well. I just had lunch with 5-year-olds the other day. Everyone should do that. And that's where we're trying to broaden our approach as well, because it's just, you can see, like if you were thinking about where could you put your focus to get a pretty good impact, it's influencing little kids from when they're quite young, because they're just forming their ideas about, oh yeah, this is a great idea. And that happens. I feel like for us, I'd love to broaden that approach for sure. But it's totally second. If you get the chance, have breakfast or have lunch with 5-year-olds. It's hilarious. It's so cool.
Selena Pham, who's a student central customer service assistant at the University of Newcastle, has asked, are you open to any collaborations with student organisations and clubs to visit Feedback Organic for the 1 hour farming experience? And have you had clubs take part before?
Yeah, totally. We've had groups up to about 40 people out there at a time. So strangely enough, I'd actually be surprised at how many uni students actually do come out already. And I feel like that's a great opportunity, if not even to arrange a weekly bus or something to even get involved. We've had, I think, 4 work placements from UON through, I think it's development studies or a variety of different subjects or degrees. And yeah, without a question, we can arrange that to happen. So let's make that happen. Get in contact for sure.
That's so great that working around learning students take part in your company.
Yeah, I guess it's a great case study for them to go, yeah, this is a great example of what they're studying. And so all for it.
Excellent. We'll move into challenge management before we wrap up. Tim Kelso, who's a data manager at the Uni of Newcastle, has asked, what have been the biggest challenges in signing up new customers? And does the average Joe recognise the scale of food waste in Australia and around the world?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the biggest challenge in signing up new customers depends on the type of customers, whether it's around the food waste or the kind of the feed box or school programs. I'll just talk about the feed box for a second, because our value proposition is vastly different to all of I'd say that this with giving you some relative understanding of our sustainable closed loop kind of food production model compared to, I love HelloFresh, but HelloFresh, for example, like it's just a different version of like food offerings. And like the whole idea that we're converting food waste into food is fantastic, but conveying that to a customer set, other than us trying to just promote it as much as possible, is one of the hardest things about converting a customer into a customer. So that's a bit of a challenge to get our story across, and that comes down to marketing promotion, doing our best with that. And then on the food waste side of things as well, it's not for everyone. Like there are businesses out there who, it's just they have got so many other things to concern themselves with just running a business, and that's just even trying to make a return. So adding like our kind of additional service in there, even though it does ultimately long-term reduce the cost of what they're kind of managing, because we offer behavior change programs around food waste avoidance as well. It's hard to get everyone on board, but you just got to pick your fights, I think, and you'll understand who's on board pretty soon. Hopefully that helps.
Definitely. This is a great question to wrap this section of our event up with. Exara Habiram, who's the founder of Exara Designs, has asked, what can we do to encourage people to get behind this initiative?
It's a great question. Thank you for that question as well. I think like we're an organization which we're trying to promote things as much as we can through events. There's like we have basically a discussion panel or a panel discussion coming up, which is it's based around growing food's future. And coming along to those, having organic conversations from that, as in not around organic things, but as in organic conversations, and spreading the ideas is how change happens. What I studied at the beginning of this year was behavior change models, and it's about creating social norms, and that's how we can actually create behavior change. So I feel like one of the best ways of helping out here and promoting things like this is to be a role model to others, and perhaps look at frameworks like this and get involved, and then promote it just by conversation and supporting. We don't need any financial support or anything from individuals or anything at the moment at all. It's just about having conversations with other people who you think would be interested in this, and then off we go. I think the best thing that I'm trying to do at the moment is actually have conversations with councils. Specifically, I've just had a few conversations with Newcastle Council, Lake Mac, the Hunter Joint organisation, who works upon 10 councils. And that's been a great step forward, because I feel like that is, obviously with one contact, you can then spread your reach quite significantly. So if anyone is interested in supporting on that level, please get in contact. That would be wonderful.
I think that's a great message. When you want to change behavior, when you want to get the word out, just talk to other humans. It's simple, right? Very simple. We have a few minutes left for questions. If anyone in the audience wants to put their hand up and ask a question. When you ask it, I'll repeat the question for everyone online, and then we'll jump into it.
James. Thanks, David. It was a great presentation. Has any council get scope and scale? Hunter, hopefully.
So James has asked for everyone online if any council that David knows of, especially in Australia, have done similar to what Japan have done and split their bin system into, instead of the 3 that we have, into 9 different bins, and gone a little bit more granular with the way that they're splitting their waste.
What a progressive council that would be. I feel Lake Mac certainly is heading up a pretty good direction as well. They've got their own organics side, at least. I personally don't know anything around kind of the councils around that we're working with at the moment, but I think questions like that and kind of just a constant pushing for these kind of things is where it needs to happen. Wouldn't it be great? Like that'd be I know that within my home, I have a soft plastics, have a normal recyclable, compostable, general waste. And I feel like there's obviously another 5 streams that I'm missing out on. And it's like, comes down to education, and then also then just like making it possible for people to be involved in that.
Cool. So you mentioned that, being a social enterprise, thinking about going for the not-for-profit approach, getting accredited as a social enterprise through social traders.
What was your name, sorry?
Chloe.
Chloe's asked if David's engaged with SECNA and whether they've gone for, what's the word?
The accreditation.
Accreditation as a social enterprise and a not-for-profit.
No, but that sounds such a great opportunity, and I'm still tossing and turning it. I've been in contact with a not-for-profit, I don't know, kind of a business which sets up not-for-profits, and trying to work out like what is the best way forward. I wasn't aware that you could combine both, so that sounds pretty interesting. I thought they were distinctly different, but that's something I'd love to talk to you more about for sure. Thank you.
Thanks, Chloe. And Jamie?
So my question was, how are you using collaboration?
Jamie's asked a fantastic question about implementing tech into education and empowerment of people using these sorts of circular economy methodologies, like adding tech into bins for dashboards, or adding tech into soil so you have a sense that can sense what needs to happen for that soil, what needs to happen next. Does it need more or less of something?
Yeah, that was really well summarized as well. It's impressive. At the moment, Jamie, I don't think we have, we haven't had any kind of funding firstly to perhaps do that. And it's like, you just start to think about where could you apply that in, in other words, there's a variety of ways to probably apply it. And the only thing I can think of at the moment is perhaps where we're heading, which is towards the funding towards food waste avoidance, and within the individual cafes or within the individual early childhood centres, and just how that could be then implemented, because it's what we're trying to achieve there is behaviour change. And I think the tech would perhaps come in with. So there's two target audiences we're trying to do with the early childhood centres, for example. It's the staff within the early childhood centres, but also the families and the children. And I feel like the events and things that we're promoting as the application for this grant, it comes down to then how do you intervene with the behaviour of the families that are associated with the early childhood centres, and how can you use tech to kind of, whenever they're about to do a certain behaviour, like how do you intervene with that? And that's probably where it would be well applied. I'll let you know how that goes. I'd love to look into it.
We have time for one more, so Ganilla.
Thank you. Yeah, in terms of your business growth and survival, what keeps you up at night? What doesn't?
Ganilla has asked a very great question. What keeps David up at night when it comes to business continuity and survival?
Oh, I love this question as well. It's so true. Okay, just to give you some context, just recently, the farm side of it, I've passed that on to the employees. So now it's like, it's their entity, and I'm so happy that it's kind of become a farm startup or an incubator for them. So it's now presented me with, okay, where am I going to put my attention? And at this very moment, it's either talking about turning into a not-for-profit or a social enterprise, or working with councils, perhaps creating a circular urban ag role, or is it actually getting mentorship through another consulting firm around this? And that's what keeps me up at night, right at this very moment, and making sure, and we all probably have these thoughts about, like, are we putting our time into the focus right now to work out, make sure that our future is aligned to where we want to be. Oh man, it's such an interesting time. Every obstacle is an opportunity, have no doubt about that. That's what I'm living at the moment. But it's just about having as many conversations with people within the industry and outside of the industry as well, to see, firstly, can we offer each other advice and mentorship, but also I just want to shadow you for a day, or a staff member to say, what's this? That's interesting. I was talking about this with my sister the other day about trying to create some type of book or something called the 5 o'clock shadow, which is like you'd actually just like walking around trying to actually just see how like a CEO operates in a different industry, and just obviously try not to annoy that person in any way. But I thought that'd be such a unique thing to try and just get some insight to some other industries. Thank you for that question.
Fantastic question and great answer. Love the idea of thinking about, are you channeling your time into the brightest future for you?
Do we all think that? I'm sure we do.
I hope we do. So we're going to wrap up in a second. I'll just go through a few things that are coming up at the I2N, things for you to take part in. Navigator for Researchers apps are closing this Sunday. If you know of a researcher, or you are a researcher who's keen to understand how they can create impact from the work that they're doing, applications closed for this program. It's a 2-day face-to-face program from I2N Hub at Honeysuckle, which will be happening 1st and 2nd of July. You'll get access to our wonderful facilitators to talk you through the lean startup methodology, understanding how it is that you can get out there and talk to people and involve people in the creation of your solution. Validator, apps are open. This is our pre-accelerator that we run twice a year. It'll be running face-to-face again over 9 weeks at I2N Hub at Honeysuckle. You'll come as a team, put an application through as a team, and understand what it is that you're creating, who it is that you can solve a problem for, and find the quickest pathway to market. Again, this will be face-to-face. It's a fantastic opportunity to work from the hub, to interface with not only the facilitators, but also a mentor who's assigned to your team, and with the people, with the community within the hub itself. E101, or Entrepreneurship 101, is our earliest stage program. It's completely online. You can access it as you need, at what time you need. There's 5 modules you work through from the very beginning of your journey all the way through to finding a pathway to market and pricing that solution. You can find more out at newcastle.edu.au/E101. And our hackathon for water security is coming up. We partner with the City of Newcastle and Hunter Water, and we'll be delivering a hackathon for 10 hours from I2N Hub at Honeysuckle again. And it doesn't matter who you are, come on your own and join a team, bring a team and compete for prize money. Take part in creating a technological solution, work as a team and pitch it to the judges. It all culminates in a pitch. And if you win, you could walk away with cash prizes, time at the hub within the incubator, and great mentorship on that bench if you choose to continue with it. But that's it from us this morning. I'll hand this back with 3 minutes for our morning. And thank you again, David. And thank you again, everyone joining us in person and online for Startup Stories.